Now, the government of Emmerson Mnangagwa is facing criticism after being subjected to anti-corruption protests, journalists and members of the opposition to brutality and arrests. 2 weeks ago, the police arrested journalist Hopewell Chinono at his home for exposing COVID-19 corruption in Mnangagwa's administration. There are calls for South Africa, the AU and other regional bodies to urgently step in and stop human rights abuse against citizens. Joining us is One South Africa leader, Mmusi Maimane, just to expand on this discussion. A very good morning to you and thank you for your time. Zimbabwe is making global headlines as citizens face arrest for protesting against corruption. You've been very vocal about the political climate and the conditions in Zimbabwe, even during your term as DA leader. What kind of fighting chance do you think Zimbabweans have in this instance, especially considering that for the longest time, President Robert Mugabe was considered the problem?
Good morning, and good morning to fellow South Africans and Africans. This is a matter of human rights. This is a matter of diplomacy. It's a matter of principle, and it's a matter of solidarity with fellow Africans. When we joined the journey to say equally so Zimbabwean lives matter, we felt it was absolutely crucial that we cannot keep repeating the same mistakes. When President Robert Mugabe was committing such atrocities, the South African government took the stance of quiet diplomacy and allowed these atrocities to continue. When Emmerson Mnangagwa took over as president, I equally remember at the time saying you cannot violate the constitution by having two commanders-in-chief of the army, where in fact the army then was dictating as to who could become president or when. And now, as we hosted many members of parliament who were exiled in Zimbabwe, we hosted them here in South Africa and will continue the fight. Now, to your question about what hope is there, the struggle is real. We must stand together as South Africans and Southern Africa to say we condemn the actions of the Zimbabwean government. I will request for the Department of International Relations, will write to them to say they at least must intervene in this matter. South Africa cannot make the same mistake of adopting quiet diplomacy. We must take deliberate actions to condemn human rights violations when they occur. And SADC, the African Union, must take action, and equally so as citizens of South Africa. We must stand up together on behalf of our brothers and sisters in Zimbabwe. Because if we are silent to those atrocities, when our liberties are taken for granted here in South Africa, we were equally during apartheid supported by Zambia, Zimbabwe, and many other nations. We should now stand in solidarity because in future it may be us and we will require their solidarity.
Zimbabweans are clearly fed up. They're also in a desperate situation, crossing the Messina border post into South Africa, looking for food and supplies. The health system is also in a very dire situation. We've seen over the past few months, doctors and nurses picketing and looking for answers. What will it take for a situation like this to normalize? I mean, you've already mentioned how SADC needs to intervene, but what other measures will it take to ensure that there is human rights violations do not continue to be the story of Zimbabwe?
Well, first and foremost, if you entertain what happened in 2007 in those elections, when we insisted on creating a government of national unity, where in fact President Mugabe had lost the elections, I think that was a massive mistake, despite what was going on around there. Now what we've got to do is ensure that at the next coming elections, I've been in consultation with the opposition there in Nelson Chamisa, to ensure that there is a free and fair election process, that in fact change can occur in Zimbabwe, because at first, whereas the Kenyans teach us we must be liberated, and then we must liberate ourselves from the liberators. And ultimately it cannot be that ZANU will govern forever, because they are governing with impunity. They are oppressing their own people. So the second thing that I really believe must be in place is that ultimately, as Zimbabwe takes a stance, we need to take all necessary measures to stabilize the situation there, ensure that economic trade can take place freely. I really believe South Africa has a crucial role in intervening to make sure that there's effective health and safety measures, and South Africa has a very crucial role to take. If we turn a blind eye now, economically, socially, we are going to exacerbate the situation that is taking place in Zimbabwe. And then ultimately, through diplomacy and through being able to intervene, our businesses here in South Africa are fairly well invested into Zimbabwe. And we've got to ensure that those business interests thrive, and we've got to protect Zimbabweans along the way. So this is a role for South Africa to provide leadership. We cannot sit back and ignore what is taking place. Not only is condemnation going to be to be just one action, but we ultimately need to take economic actions and ensure that we stabilize that. And as I have called for the leadership in terms of the President Mnangagwa and the opposition there to be able to find themselves and say where there are acts of human rights, those should be dealt with swiftly, and we must build a consensus upon which safeguards all of the citizens of Zimbabwe.
Thank you very much for your time. One South Africa leader, Mmusi Maimane, there speaking about the situation in Zimbabwe.